The Great Hall of Serenity Prime stretched beyond what human eyes could easily see. Crystal spires reached toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the clouds, and soft blue light filled every corner. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, her simple black suit looking very plain next to the amazing clothes and bodies of the alien representatives around her. 847 species had come to judge humanity today. Some floated in glass tanks filled with strange liquids. Others stood on metal legs that clicked against the smooth floor. A few were just glowing clouds of gas that somehow spoke without mouths. Sarah had studied them all during her 3-month journey to this perfect world. High Arbiter Veltar rose from his crystal throne. His body looked like living diamond, throwing rainbows of light across the hall when he moved. His voice came from everywhere at once, deep and cold like winter wind. We gathered today to decide if the species called humans from the world called Earth should join our Galactic Civilization Council, Veltar announced. The evidence has been reviewed. The decision will be made. Sarah's hands stayed steady at her sides, but her heart was beating fast. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times on the long trip here. Everything humanity had worked for over the past 50 years led to this single day. A floating screen appeared above the crowd, showing Earth from space. The blue and green world looked peaceful enough, but then the data started scrolling past. Sarah watched the alien faces change as they read the numbers. Gravity, 2.3 times galactic standard, read a voice that sounded like singing crystals. This was Dr. Keshai, one of the few beings who had shown any kindness to Sarah during her stay. Atmospheric pressure, dangerous to most known life forms. Solar radiation, lethal levels reaching surface. The murmuring started then. Sarah heard words in languages she didn't know, but the tone was clear enough. Fear, disgust, disbelief. Weather patterns show storms with wind speeds that would destroy our cities. Keshai continued, her voice getting quieter. Temperature ranges from -40 to +50 degrees. Seismic activity causes regular ground shaking. Ocean currents create waves tall as buildings. A delegate who looked like a giant flower spoke up, petals trembling. How could any thinking creature survive such conditions? That is not the worst part, Veltar said, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. Show them the biological data. The screen changed to show Earth's animals. Lions hunting zebras, sharks attacking seals, humans running from bears. Then it showed human history. Wars, fighting, cities burning. This species evolved alongside creatures designed for killing, Veltar continued. They fought each other for thousands of years. Their entertainment includes watching beings hurt each other for sport. They eat the flesh of other animals and call it normal. The alien crowd was getting louder now. Sarah heard words like savage and primitive and dangerous being whispered all around her. They have poison in their bodies that they drink for fun, added another delegate, this one looking like a walking tree. They jump out of flying machines and call it exciting. They climb mountains that could kill them and say it makes them feel alive. Ambassador Chen, Veltar said, turning his diamond gaze toward her. You may speak for your kind before we vote. Sarah walked to the center of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. She looked up at the hundreds of alien faces watching her and took a deep breath. You're afraid of us, she said simply. I understand that. We come from a world that would kill most of you in minutes. We grew up fighting to survive every single day, but that's exactly why you need us. A ripple of shocked sounds went through the crowd. Sarah kept talking. You've built something beautiful here, a civilization based on peace and safety and comfort. But what happens when that peace is threatened? What happens when something dangerous comes from outside your perfect worlds? She pointed to the screen still showing Earth's storms and predators. We learned to live with danger. We learned to adapt. We learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to be stronger than the thing trying to kill you. You call us savage, but we call it being alive. Your species has killed billions of its own kind, Veltar interrupted, his voice sharp as breaking glass. How can we trust such creatures with access to galactic technology? Because we learned from those mistakes, Sarah shot back. Every war taught us something. Every fight made us better. We stopped fighting each other and started working together. We reached for the stars not to conquer them, but to find our place among them. She spread her arms wide, looking around the great hall. You want to judge us by our worst moments, but what about our best? We risk our lives to save strangers. We explore places that could kill us just to learn something new. We never give up even when everything seems impossible. Isn't that worth something? Dr. Kesahai's tank moved closer to the speaking area. Her voice was gentle like flowing water. The human raises interesting points. Perhaps their unique perspective could benefit our council. But Veltar was already shaking his diamond head. Their world has made them unfit for civilized society. They solve problems with violence. They thrive in chaos. They would bring their primitive ways into our peaceful galaxy. We would bring our strength, Sarah said, her voice getting louder. We would bring our courage. We would bring our refusal to quit when things get hard. But most of all, we would bring our hope that different kinds of beings can work together to build something better. The hall went silent. Sarah could feel the weight of hundreds of alien minds judging her entire species based on this one moment. The vote will now be taken, Veltar announced. All in favor of accepting humanity into the Galactic Civilization Council. One light appeared in the vast hall. Dr. Kesahai's tank glowed soft blue. All opposed? The hall exploded in light. 846 beings voted against humanity in that moment. The lights were so bright, Sarah had to close her eyes. When the lights faded, Veltar stood tall on his crystal throne. The decision is final. Humanity is rejected from membership in the Galactic Civilization Council. You are deemed too dangerous for peaceful coexistence. Sarah felt something break inside her chest, but she kept her chin up. We came here seeking partnership, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the huge hall. We're leaving with knowledge of who you really are. She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the silence. At the doorway, she stopped and looked back one more time. Someday you'll need us, she called out. When you're perfect, safe worlds aren't enough to protect you from what's coming. You'll remember the Deathworlders you turned away, and we'll remember too. The great doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder, leaving the aliens to their perfect, safe, and very fragile civilization. Captain Marcus Webb floated in the command chair of the human ship Determination, staring at the strange structure ahead of them. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Chen's rejection at Serenity Prime, and humanity had not been sitting quietly. The thing in front of them looked like someone had crashed a dozen different ships together, and then decided to live in the wreckage. Metal plates from 100 worlds were welded together with no care for how they looked. Steam leaked from pipes that went nowhere. Lights blinked in patterns that made no sense. That's got to be it, said Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. The rejection station, Marcus nodded. They had heard whispers about this place during their travels through the frontier expanse. A hidden trading post where species rejected by the Galactic Civilization Council came to do business. It had taken months of careful asking and following rumors to find it. Send the signal Chen gave us, Marcus ordered. A series of beeps and clicks went out into space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a voice crackled over their radio, speaking rough but understandable English. Well, more Deathworlders. You're either very brave or very stupid to come here, humans. Dock at Bay 7. Try anything clever and we'll throw you out an airlock. The docking bay was barely big enough for their ship. As the airlock opened, Marcus smelled a mixture of oil, strange cooking, and air that had been breathed by too many different kinds of lungs. The gravity felt wrong, changing every few steps as they walked down a corridor that curved in directions that hurt to think about. Welcome to the ass end of nowhere, said a voice like grinding rocks. Marcus turned to see something that looked like a walking bear crossed with a tank. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in brown fur and metal armor. Scars crossed its face, and one eye had been replaced with a glowing red lens. I'm War Chief Groktar of the Ursine clans. The creature continued. You must be the humans we've been hearing about. The one stupid enough to apply to the fancy council. Captain Marcus Webb. Marcus replied, not backing down despite the size difference. And yes, we got rejected. Groktar laughed, a sound like an avalanche. Join the club. We got turned down for being too aggressive. Apparently, the fact that we solve problems by hitting them really hard makes us unsuitable for their precious civilization. They walked through corridors filled with the strangest mix of beings Marcus had ever seen. A group of creatures that looked like living crystals played cards with beings made of what appeared to be liquid metal. In one corner, something that might have been a plant was arguing with a cloud of gas that smelled like lightning. The council likes things neat and clean and predictable, Groktar explained as they walked. They want species that think the same way, act the same way, solve problems the same way. Anyone too different gets the boot. They entered a large chamber where dozens of aliens were eating, drinking, and making deals. The noise was incredible, but somehow friendly. Marcus realized he was seeing something the council would never understand. Beings who were completely different working together because they had to. That's hive mind Zeta 7 over there. Groktar pointed to a group of small, spider-like robots clustered around a table. Silicon-based collective intelligence. The council said they were incompatible with individual-focused society. Bunch of idiots. Zeta 7 can think about 17 different problems at the same time. In another area, tall, thin beings with skin like starlight were trading with creatures that looked like floating jellyfish. The Wanderer clans, Groktar continued. They don't have a home planet. Just live in their ships moving from place to place. Council couldn't handle the idea of beings without fixed addresses. Said they were unsuitable for permanent membership. A small robot from the hive mind group skittered over to them. When it spoke, 17 voices talked at once, creating strange harmonies. Humans, humans, humans. We have heard, learned, discovered of your rejection. Fascinating, interesting, intriguing that the council fears mammals from high gravity. Worlds. They fear anyone who might upset their perfect balance, said a new voice. Marcus turned to see one of the Wanderer clans approaching. Up close, their skin really did look like it held tiny stars. They moved like they were floating even though they walked on two legs. I am Skyweaver Nala of the 4th Migration Fleet, the being said in a voice like wind through metal. We have watched the council for 300 years. They only accept those who will not challenge their way of thinking. So what do you all do out here? Marcus asked. We survive, Groktar said simply. We trade. We help each other when the universe gets nasty. And sometimes we do things the council won't do. As if summoned by those words, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Everyone stopped talking and looked toward the communication screens that dropped down from the ceiling. Emergency signal from the research vessel. Peaceful inquiry, announced a voice from the speakers. They're under attack by quantum storm pirates near the Vega Junction. The entire chamber went quiet for a moment. Then Groktar stood up, his chair creaking under his weight. Council ship? He asked. Yes, the voice confirmed. 47 scientists aboard. They sent a distress call to GCC forces, but the nearest patrol won't arrive for 18 hours. The pirates will be done with them in 2, said Skyweaver Nala quietly. Marcus felt something stir in his chest, the same feeling he'd had back on Earth when he'd joined the Space Navy. The need to help when others couldn't or wouldn't. How far? He asked. Groktar looked at him with his good eye. 6 hours hard burn, why? Because 47 beings are going to die if nobody helps them, Marcus said. And I didn't come out here to let that happen. They're council scientists, pointed out one of the hive mind robots. The same council that rejected, dismissed, spurned all of us. So, Marcus stood up and looked around the chamber.
Since when do we let innocent beings die just because their government is made up of idiots?
Skyweaver Nala smiled, her star skin twinkling brighter. The Deathworlder speaks wisdom. We of the 4th Fleet will join this rescue. Hive Mind Zeta 7 will provide tactical analysis support coordination, said the robot collective. Groktar cracked his knuckles, a sound like breaking boulders. Been too long since I had a good fight. The Iron Bears are in. Within an hour, an impossible fleet was racing through space toward the Vega Junction. Human ships flew alongside Ursine dreadnoughts, Wanderer scout vessels, and the strange geometric craft of the hive mind. They had no unified command structure, no standard equipment, no shared language except the need to help. The Quantum Storm pirates had the research vessel surrounded when they arrived. The Peaceful Inquiry was a beautiful council ship, all smooth curves and gentle lights. It looked fragile next to the jagged, weapon-covered pirate vessels. This is War Chief Groktar to all pirate scum. Groktar's voice boomed over the radio. "You have 30 seconds to release that ship and run away. After that, we start shooting." The pirate leader's response was predictable. "We outnumber you 3-1, and this is our territory. Turn around and fly away, or we'll add your ships to our collection." "Marcus," Groktar's private channel crackled. "Want to show these idiots what Deathworlders can do?" "With pleasure," Marcus replied. What happened next would be talked about in the frontier expanse for years. The human ships moved like fighters, dancing between the larger pirate vessels with impossible grace. The Ursine dreadnoughts absorbed damage that should have destroyed them and kept firing back. The Wanderer scouts appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking from angles that shouldn't exist. And through it all, the hive mind coordinated everything with perfect timing. In 15 minutes, it was over. The pirates that survived were running for deep space, and the peaceful inquiry was free. "This is Dr. Milani of the research vessel," came a shocked voice over the radio. Who are you? Why did you help us?" Marcus looked around the bridge at his crew, then at the mixed fleet surrounding them. "We're the ones your council didn't want," he said simply, "and we helped because that's what beings do for each other." The silence that followed lasted a long time. Later, back at the rejection station, the various species gathered to celebrate and plan. Marcus found himself in a corner with the leaders of the other groups, sketching out ideas on a piece of paper. "We could do more than just trade," he said. "We could be something new. A real alliance." "The Frontier Alliance," Skyweaver Nala mused. "I like the sound of that. Mutual defense, shared technology, open trade," added Zeta-7 through one of their robots. Groktar pounded his fist on the table, making everything jump. "And when the next emergency happens, we'll be ready to help, whether the Council wants us to or not." As reports of the rescue filtered back to civilized space, the beings at the rejection station knew something had changed. They were no longer just outcasts surviving on the edges. They were becoming something else. Something the perfect, safe, civilized galaxy would eventually need to notice. Admiral Sarah Chen floated in the zero-gravity command center of the human battleship, Unbreakable, watching the emergency broadcast from the Galactic Civilization Council with cold satisfaction. Her sister had returned from the rejection at Serenity Prime a broken woman, but Sarah had spent the months since then turning that rejection into fuel for something much more powerful. The hologram showing High Arbiter Veltar flickered with interference. Behind his crystal form, Sarah could see smoke and the flash of weapons fire. "All member species are ordered to retreat to core systems immediately," Veltar was saying. His normally perfect voice cracked with strain. "The Shavanti swarm has returned. 3 worlds have already fallen. We estimate 4 billion dead in the first wave." Sarah turned to her communications officer. "How many ships do we have ready?" 57 human vessels, Admiral, plus the Frontier Alliance fleet. Another 112 ships of various types. Such a small number compared to the thousands the Council commanded. But Sarah had learned something. In her years fighting in Earth's harsh environments, size mattered, less than how you used what you had. "Patch me through." To the Alliance leaders, she ordered. The screen split to show War Chief Groktar on his dreadnought, Skyweaver Nala aboard a Wanderer vessel that seemed to be made of controlled starlight, and the spider-like form of Hive Mind Zeta-7's primary unit. "You all saw the broadcast," Sarah said without preamble. "The thing they've all been afraid of for 1,000 years just woke up and started eating their perfect worlds. And they still haven't asked for help," Groktar growled. "Proud idiots would rather die than admit they need the outcasts." Through the Hive Mind's 17 voices came analysis. "Shavanti swarm operates functions destroys through biomechanical integration. They consume, absorb, digest both organic and technological matter. Previous encounters, battles, conflicts show conventional weapons ineffective, useless, worthless." Skyweaver Nyla's voice was like wind through crystal caves. "The Council's ships are beautiful, but they fight like they think. Predictably, the swarm has had 1,000 years to sleep and plan. It knows exactly how they will respond." Sarah nodded. "Which is why we're not going to fight like the Council." Before anyone could respond, another transmission cut through their channel. Sarah's blood went cold when she recognized the crystalline features of High Arbiter Veltar himself. "This is an emergency diplomatic communication for Admiral Chen of the Human Forces." The others looked at Sarah with surprise. She activated the private channel. Feltar's perfect crystal form appeared before her, but now she could see the cracks running through his structure. Fear and desperation had damaged even his physical body. "Admiral," Feltar began, then stopped. Sarah had never heard a council leader struggle for words before. "You want our help," she said simply. "The swarm has taken Harmony, our third largest world. They converted the entire population into components of their bioships. 4 billion beings, Admiral, changed into weapons aimed at our hearts." Sarah felt a cold rage building in her chest. "And 6 months ago you told us we were too dangerous to exist in your civilized galaxy. You must understand." "No." Sarah's voice cut through his like a blade. "You understand. You had your chance to be partners. Now you get to find out what it costs to make enemies of people who could have been your friends." But even as she said it, Sarah was thinking about those 4 billion beings converted into weapons. She had spent her life fighting to protect innocent people. That didn't change just because their leaders were idiots. "However," she continued, "we're not going to let beings die just because you're too proud to admit you were wrong. Send us everything you have on swarm tactics and technology. We'll see what we can do." Relief flooded Veltar's features. "Thank you, Admiral." "I will personally guarantee don't." Sarah held up one hand. "We're not doing this for you or your council. We're doing it because it's right. When this is over, you'll remember that the beings you rejected were the ones who saved you." The transmission ended, and Sarah turned back to her alliance leaders. "Well?" she asked. "Hive Mind Zeta 7 has been analyzing, studying, examining swarm data for 73 years, came the multi-voice response. "We believe, theorize, calculate their primary weakness is adaptability, flexibility, change. They plan for predictable responses." Groktar showed his teeth in what other species might mistake for a smile. "Good thing we're not predictable." 3 days later, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Unbreakable at the edge of the Kepler's gate system, watching the largest space battle in galactic history unfold badly. The Council fleet was massive. Over 2,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons firing in coordinated patterns that looked like a deadly dance. It was beautiful, precise, and completely useless. The Shavanti swarm met them with creatures that had once been Council citizens. Bioships that grew new weapons as they fought, adapted to every tactic, learned from every attack. The perfect formations became perfect targets. "Council fleet is down 40% and falling back," reported her tactical officer. "They're requesting immediate assistance." Sarah watched another formation of Council ships disappear into clouds of biomechanical horror. "Launch Operation Wildfire. All ships execute chaos protocols." What happened next had never been seen in the civilized galaxy. The Frontier Alliance fleet moved like a school of fish avoiding a shark, each ship following its own path but somehow working together. Human vessels dove through gas clouds that would blind other species, their crews breathing recycled air and fighting in conditions that would kill most other beings. Ursine dreadnoughts charged straight into swarms of bioships, their crews howling battle songs as they absorbed damage that should have vaporized them. Wanderer scouts appeared and disappeared through dimensions that Council science insisted didn't exist. And through it all, Hive Mind Zeta 7 provided coordination that was less like military command and more like a jazz improvisation with 17 players at once. Sarah's ship dove toward the largest swarm concentration, her crew working in the high radiation environment near the system's star. The bioships followed, trying to adapt to their tactics, but adaptation took time and humans had learned to make time their enemy. "All weapons, target the bioneural clusters," Sarah ordered. "Don't give them time to adjust." The human ships fired everything at once, then immediately changed course and weapon types. The swarm tried to adapt to the first attack just as the second arrived from a completely different direction, using completely different technology. "War Chief." Groktar's voice boomed over the battlefield radio. "Iron Bear's full assault. Show these metal parasites what a death world teaches." The Ursine dreadnoughts smashed through the swarm formations like meteors, their crews fighting hand-to-hand when bioships tried to board them. Sarah watched in amazement as Ursine warriors battled cybernetic horrors in the vacuum of space, protected only by power armor and the thick fur that had evolved on their harsh homeworld. "Anomalous readings from Swarm Prime vessel," her science officer reported. It's trying to communicate." The main screen shifted to show the largest of the bioships, a twisted mass of metal and flesh the size of a small moon. Lights pulsed across its surface in patterns that almost looked like language. Put me through, Sarah ordered. The voice that came from the bioship was like the death rattle of a civilization. Why? Why do you fight for them? They rejected you. Cast you out. Made you nothing. Sarah felt her breath catch. The swarm wasn't just mindless. It was angry. Who were you? She asked quietly. We were the first. First to reach the stars from our dying world. First to ask for help. First to be told we were not suitable for their perfect civilization. The voice was getting stronger, more focused. They watched our world burn and did nothing. Said we were too aggressive, too desperate, too different. Understanding hit Sarah like a physical blow. The swarm is what's left of the first species the council rejected. We became what they said we were. We became their nightmare. And when we return from the dark, they will remember what it cost to abandon those who needed them. Around them, the battle was turning. The council fleet was broken, retreating in panic. Only the Frontier Alliance held the line. Sarah made a decision that would echo through the galaxy. You want revenge on those who abandoned you, she said to the swarm. I understand that. But look around. The beings dying out there aren't the ones who rejected you. They're just people trying to live their lives in a system they didn't build. They benefit from our exclusion. Maybe. But we're here now. The rejects and outcasts and unwanted. We know what it feels like to be turned away. And we chose to build something better instead of burning down what already existed. The swarm prime was silent for a long moment. Around them, smaller bioships slowed their attacks. You would have us forgive? I would have you choose, Sarah said. You can destroy everything the council built and become the monster they said you were. Or you can help us build something new, something that doesn't turn away beings who need help. The silence stretched across the battlefield. Council ships limped away while Frontier Alliance vessels waited for the decision that would reshape the galaxy. Finally, the Swarm Prime spoke again. We are tired of being angry. We have been angry for so long. Then rest, Sarah said gently. Dr. Kesahai swam nervously in her tank aboard the research vessel, Deep Truth, watching the data streams that should not exist. 3 months had passed since the Frontier Alliance had saved Kepler's Gate from the Shavanti swarm, and everything she thought she knew about galactic politics was dissolving like salt in water. Her assistant, a young aquatic named Rippletail, gestured frantically with 4 arms at the holographic displays surrounding them. Doctor, you need to see this. 27 more species have formally requested to join the Frontier Alliance. 27! Kesai felt her gill slits flutter with anxiety. As the only council member who had voted for human inclusion, she had been quietly gathering intelligence on what the outcasts were building, while the council pretended everything was normal. It was not normal. Nothing was normal anymore. Show me the latest reports from the border worlds, she ordered. The data painted a picture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Frontier Alliance ships were providing disaster relief to council worlds struck by asteroid storms. Ursine engineers were helping rebuild mining stations damaged by solar flares. Human medical teams were treating plague outbreaks on 3 different worlds, working in toxic environments that would kill most council citizens. And through it all, the council's official response was to pretend none of it was happening. Dr. Kesahai. Rippletail's voice was barely above a whisper. There's something else. The classified files you requested about the early days of the council. I found something. The young assistant activated a privacy field around Kesahai's tank. What appeared on the screen made her stomach acid churn with horror. Project Harmony, she read aloud. Biological warfare research. Discontinued after test subjects achieved sentience. Test subjects showed aggressive adaptation and rapid technological integration. Subjects classified as containment breach risk and jettisoned into deep space. Kesahai felt like the water around her had turned to ice. When was this? 1,012 years ago, Doctor. The test subjects were launched toward the galactic rim, the same direction the Shavanti swarm had emerged from, the same creatures that had nearly destroyed the Council's core worlds. The ancient enemy that the Council claimed had appeared from outside known space. The Council created the swarm, Kesahai whispered. They turned thinking beings into weapons, then threw them away when the experiment got too dangerous. Rippletail's 4 eyes were wide with terror. Doctor, what do we do with this information? Before Kesahai could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as the captain's voice echoed through the corridors. All hands to emergency stations. We are receiving a priority distress signal from Harmony Base. The swarm has returned. And it's not alone. Kesahai activated the ship's main viewer, her heart sinking as she saw what was happening to Harmony. The industrial world that had been the swarm's first conquest months ago. The bioships surrounding the planet were different now. Bigger, more complex. And they were building something in the planet's orbit. A massive structure that pulsed with the same biomechanical energy as the swarm itself. Captain Velnara to all science stations. Came the announcement. We need analysis on that construct immediately. Kesahai dove into her work, her 8 arms flowing over control surfaces as she directed every sensor the ship had toward the alien structure. What she found made no sense at first, then made terrible sense. It's a communication array, she announced over the ship's intercom, but not for normal space. It's reaching into dimensions we can barely detect. Her equipment picked up the first transmission just as High Arbiter Veltar's personal shuttle arrived in-system with a full Council fleet escort. The message was being broadcast on frequencies that hurt to hear, in harmonics that made her tank water vibrate. Brothers and sisters of the void, the transmission began, and Kesahai recognized the voice of the swarm prime they had spoken to at Kepler's gate. We have found others like us, others who were cast aside by those who called themselves civilized. The communication array pulsed brighter, and space around it began to bend in ways that violated several laws of physics. Through the dimensional tiers came ships unlike anything Kesahai had ever seen, not the biomechanical horrors of the swarm, but vessels of pure darkness that seemed to eat light itself. Others looked like frozen crystal, beautiful and deadly. Still others appeared to be made from the stuff of stars burning with nuclear fire. By all the depths, Captain Velnara breathed over the radio. How many species have we rejected over the millennia? The answer came in the form of more ships emerging from impossible spaces. Hundreds of them, then thousands, all of them carrying beings that the Council had once deemed unsuitable for civilization. Kesahai's instruments detected energy signatures from creatures of living metal, beings of pure energy, species that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Every nightmare the Council had ever imagined come home to roost. High Arbiter Veltar to all Council forces, came the crystalline voice over the emergency channels. Fall back to Serenity Prime immediately. This is not a military engagement. This is Judgment Day. But even as the Council fleet began its retreat, other ships were arriving in the system. Kesahai felt a moment of hope as she recognized the clean lines of human vessels, the brutal efficiency of Ursine dreadnoughts, the impossible geometry of Wanderer craft. This is Admiral Sarah Chen to all Council forces, came a voice that had become famous across the galaxy in recent months. We're here to help, whether you want us to or not. Kesahai watched as the Frontier Alliance fleet took position between the Council ships and the growing mass of interdimensional vessels. It was painfully obvious that they were vastly outnumbered, but they held their line anyway. Dr. Kesahai, Rippletail's voice was tight with fear. I'm detecting massive gravitic distortions near Serenity Prime. Something huge is coming out of hyperspace. The main screen shifted to show the Council's capital world. The perfect blue skies and crystal cities looked peaceful and untouched. But space around the planet was twisting like water going down a drain. What emerged was the largest artificial construct Kesahai had ever seen. A space station the size of a small moon, covered in weapons that made her instrumentation scream warnings. At its heart was a Council insignia twisted into something monstrous. Dreadnought Purity, whispered Captain Velnara. The Council's secret project. We've been building it in deep space for 200 years. Building it for what? Kesahai asked, though she was beginning to suspect. For exactly this moment came a new voice. High Arbiter Veltar had patched directly into their communications. For the day when all our past mistakes came home to destroy us, the massive weapon began charging, energy signatures off every scale Kesahai's instruments possessed. Whatever it was planning to fire, it would sterilize everything within a light-year radius. Arbiter, Admiral Chen's voice cut through the static. If you use that thing, you'll kill everyone. Council, Alliance, and interdimensional refugees alike. Better than letting them spread their chaos through civilized space, Veltar replied. But Kesahai could hear the desperation in his crystalline voice. You still don't get it, Chen continued. These beings aren't here to destroy your civilization. They're here because they want what we built with the Alliance. They want to belong somewhere. Through her tank speakers, Kesahai heard the Swarm Prime's voice join the communication. The human speaks truth. We did not call our scattered kin for war. We called them for hope. Hope? Veltar's laugh was like breaking glass. You've brought nothing but monsters. You made us into monsters, another voice joined in. This one, like the sound of solar wind, cast us into darkness and told yourselves we were evil because we were different. More voices joined the conversation, species speaking in languages that had been silent in the civilized galaxy for centuries, each one telling the same story: rejection, exile, abandonment by a council that demanded conformity above all else. Kesahai made a decision that would end her career and possibly her life. She activated the ship's main communication array and broadcast the classified files on every frequency she could access. Citizens of the galaxy, she announced, her voice carrying to every inhabited world, you need to know the truth about your council, about what we've done in the name of civilization. The files poured out into space, centuries of rejection records, the proof that the council had created the swarm through illegal experimentation, the locations of secret weapons like Dreadnought Purity, all of it broadcast where everyone could see. Dr. Kesahai, Veltar's voice was ice-cold with fury. You are committing treason against galactic civilization. No, Kesahai replied, feeling calmer than she had in years. I'm finally being honest about what our civilization really is. The effect was immediate. Across council space, planetary governments began broadcasting their own messages. Some demanded explanations. Others declared independence. A few announced they were applying to join the Frontier Alliance. On the main screen, Kesahai watched as the massive dreadnought's weapons continued to charge. In minutes, Veltar would have the power to burn away all. Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Unbreakable and watched the largest gathering of ships in galactic history prepare to tear each other apart over Serenity. Prime, the Council's perfect blue world, hung in space below them, surrounded by thousands of vessels representing every grudge, every rejection, every fear that had shaped galactic politics for a millennium. Dreadnought Purity dominated the space around the planet like a metal moon. Its weapons charged to levels that made Sarah's radiation detectors scream warnings. One shot from that monstrosity would sterilize everything within a light year, erasing the evidence of the Council's crimes along with billions of innocent lives. Admiral, her communications officer called out. High Arbiter Veltar is demanding to speak with you. Sarah almost refused, then reconsidered. Sometimes you had to talk to your enemies to understand how to save them from themselves. Veltar's crystal form appeared on her main screen. But the perfect being she remembered from her sister's rejection hearing was gone. Cracks ran through his body like lightning and his diamond eyes burned with desperate fury. Admiral Chen, he began, his voice like grinding stone. You have 5 minutes to clear your forces from this system before I activate Purity's main weapon. And kill every living thing in the area? Sarah asked calmly. Including your own people? Better than watching civilization burn at the hands of chaos. Veltar gestured toward the interdimensional fleet. Look at what you've brought to our perfect worlds. Creatures of darkness and madness, beings that should not exist. Sarah looked at her tactical display where the impossible ships floated in formations that hurt to perceive. Vessels made of living shadow. Craft that existed in 17 dimensions at once. Ships that burned with the fire of collapsed stars. I see survivors, she said quietly. I see beings who've spent centuries in exile because you decided they didn't fit your definition of normal. They are abominations. They're refugees, Sarah's voice hardened. Refugees you created when you decided that being different was a crime, punishable by eternal banishment. A new voice joined the communication, the Swarm Prime, speaking from its biomechanical cathedral ship. The crystal being speaks of chaos, but we have seen true chaos. We have lived in the void between stars, where reality breaks down and madness reigns. We survived by helping each other. More voices joined in, beings speaking in languages that shouldn't exist. Creatures that communicated through gravity waves and quantum fluctuations, each one telling variations of the same story. Cast out by the Council, forced to survive in impossible places, learning to work together because they had no choice. We did not come to destroy, said a voice like colliding galaxies. We came because the small human said there was a place where difference was not feared. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. These ancient beings, powerful enough to tear reality apart, had crossed dimensions and light years because of something she'd said to the Swarm Prime at Kepler's gate. "There is," she said, broadcasting on all frequencies. "The Frontier Alliance isn't perfect, but it's a place where being different makes you valuable, not dangerous." "Lies and propaganda," Veltar snarled. "Your alliance will collapse into anarchy within years. Only rigid order maintains civilization. Your rigid order created the swarm." Dr. Keshai's voice cut through the communication. Sarah looked at her secondary screen to see the aquatic scientist broadcasting from her research vessel as it accelerated towards certain destruction. "Your experiments turned thinking beings into weapons, then abandoned them when they became inconvenient." The silence that followed was broken by a sound Sarah had never heard before. High Arbiter Veltar screaming in rage and despair. "Keshai," he roared, "you have doomed us all." "No," the doctor replied calmly. "I've told the truth. What we do with it now is up to us." On her tactical display, Sarah watched as the various fleets began to move. But instead of the chaotic battle she expected, something else was happening. Council ships were breaking formation, some moving to protect civilian craft, others turning their weapons toward dreadnought purity. "Admiral Chen," came a transmission from one of the council captains. "This is Captain Zermel of the Peaceful Resolution. My crew votes to join your alliance. We're tired of being ashamed of what we serve." Similar messages began flooding the communication channels. Entire council fleets were switching sides, their crews finally seeing the true cost of the civilization they'd sworn to protect. But Dreadnought Purity's weapons continued to charge, and Veltar's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "If I cannot save civilization, then I will end it cleanly. All weapons firing in 30 seconds. Sarah made a decision that went against every military instinct she possessed. "All ships stand down. Do not fire on the dreadnought, Admiral," her tactical officer asked in confusion. "If we attack that thing, we prove everything Veltar believes about us," Sarah explained, "that we're violent chaos bringers who solve problems by breaking things." Instead, she opened a channel directly to the Swarm Prime. "You said you were tired of being angry. Here's your chance to prove it." The biomechanical ship moved forward, placing itself directly in front of Dreadnought Purity's main weapon. Other interdimensional vessels followed. Beings of living darkness, creatures made of crystallized time, entities that existed in spaces between atoms. "What are you doing?" Veltar demanded. "We are choosing," the Swarm Prime replied. "You gave us pain, so we learned to cause pain. You abandoned us, so we learned to survive alone. But the humans taught us something new." More of the impossible ships moved into the firing line, creating a living shield between the dreadnought and the rest of the galaxy. They taught us that suffering can create compassion instead of cruelty, that being rejected can teach you to accept others, that the greatest strength is choosing to protect those who hurt you. Sarah felt tears on her face as she watched beings powerful, enough to crack planets willingly place themselves in front of a weapon designed to destroy them. "We will not let you murder billions to protect your pride," said a voice like stellar wind from one of the Starfire ships. "We will die first." Veltar's scream of frustration echoed across all frequencies. "You're supposed to be monsters. You're supposed to prove that I was right to cast you out." "We were monsters," the Swarm Prime admitted. "For a long time, we were exactly what you said we were. But monsters can choose to become something else. The question is, can you?" The countdown to firing reached 10 seconds. Sarah watched her sensors as every ship in the interdimensional fleet moved to block the weapon's path. They would all die, but their sacrifice would save the galaxy from Veltar's final tantrum. 5 seconds. 3. 1. The weapon fired. Energy equivalent to a small star compressed into a beam of pure annihilation. It struck the interdimensional fleet and stopped. Not absorbed or redirected, but simply stopped, as if the universe itself had decided that this much senseless death was unacceptable. "Impossible," Veltar whispered. "Not impossible," Sarah said, watching her instruments in awe. "They're working together, beings from 17 different dimensions sharing the damage across realities we can't even perceive." The beam continued for 30 seconds, then cut off as Dreadnought Purity's systems overloaded. In the silence that followed, the interdimensional fleet still floated in space, damaged but alive. "We forgive you," the Swarm Prime said simply. All of you. The pain you caused. The centuries of exile, the attempt to murder us rather than face your mistakes. We forgive it all. Veltar's crystal form collapsed to his knees on the Dreadnought's bridge. Why? Why show mercy to those who showed you none? Because, said a human voice, and Sarah realized it was her sister speaking from the surface of Serenity Prime. That's what beings do for each other when they choose to be better than their worst moments. Ambassador Sarah Chen had somehow reached the council chambers during the battle, and she now stood where she had been rejected months ago. But this time she wasn't alone. Beings from a dozen species stood with her, council members who had chosen conscience over conformity. I propose we dissolve the Galactic Civilization Council, Ambassador Chen announced. It's a relic of fear masquerading as wisdom. In its place, I propose the Galactic Frontier Federation, an alliance based on mutual aid rather than mutual judgment. The vote that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Species that had never been allowed to speak suddenly had voices. Beings that had been cast out for being different were invited to shape the future. Even some of the interdimensional refugees chose to stay and help build something new. High Arbiter Veltar was the last to vote, his crystal form barely holding together under the weight of everything he'd learned about himself and his civilization. I vote yes, he whispered. May the universe forgive us for what we became. 1 year later, Sarah Chen stood in the same great hall on Serenity Prime, but everything had changed. The crystal spires were still beautiful, but now they housed beings from across reality. The soft blue light still filled every corner, but it illuminated creatures that a year ago would have been called impossible. As the first chancellor of the Galactic Frontier Federation, Sarah's job was to welcome new members, a task that still amazed her.